Okay, so we're diving into the Alto Knights right off the bat.
Interesting title.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I think the biggest draw right away is Robert De Niro playing two real-life mob bosses,
Oh, okay.
Frank Costello and Vito Genovese.
So two for the price of one.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exciting. I mean, what's exciting for me as well is that it's Barry Levinson who's directing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's responsible for some really, really great films.
Huge, huge name. And then the screenplay is by Nicholas Pileggi,
Okay.
who, of course, wrote both Goodfellas and Casino. So, we're
In good hands.
in the right genre, at least.
Pedigree.
Yeah, exactly. And, with this deep dive, we really want to look at what makes this film interesting beyond just another gangster film, and especially De Niro playing these two roles and how that kind of fits into the larger context of mob cinema.
Right.
So I guess the big question is this a nostalgic look back? Is it trying to do something new with the genre, or is it a commentary on the genre itself?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good question.
Let's talk about Robert De Niro playing both Frank Costello and Vito Genovese.
Okay.
I mean, these are two huge mob figures.
Titans. Yeah.
It's an interesting choice to have one actor playing both.
It is. And I think it's interesting, that there's been comparisons to the coffee shop scene in Heat.
Right.
Where you have Pacino and De Niro together. But apparently, the scenes with De Niro and De Niro don't have that same kind of electricity.
Right. Because it's...
Because, in the back of your mind, it's the same guy.
Yeah, it's the same guy, yeah.
Even with the makeup and the prosthetics, it's still...
So I guess the question is, what did you think about that, the whole one actor playing against himself?
I think, it's a bold artistic choice.
For sure. And it makes you wonder, what kind of internal process he had to go through to create those two characters.
Yeah.
There's also this idea that his portrayal of Genovese, who's kind of the more fiery of the two,
Okay.
it kind of has shades of Joe Pesci.
Uh-huh. It's just like his past roles.
Yeah, it's like those past collaborations maybe are informing how he's playing.
It makes sense that it would color how he's
Well,
playing
yeah.
a new character.
And speaking of past roles, how did you feel about the prosthetics?
Well, I think initially it was a little hard to distinguish between the two.
Right.
But apparently that fades as the film goes on, and you really start to see them as two separate characters.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway here for the listener is the argument's been made that because De Niro is who he is,
Right.
only he could play these two roles
Yeah.
because he has the weight of all of his past gangster roles behind him.
It's true. He's so intrinsically linked to that genre.
Exactly.
And the history of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, who else could act opposite De Niro as a mob boss?
Yeah. And have it actually mean something.
And have that history behind them.
Yeah.
It's amazing that he's doing that in this film with himself, essentially.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So the film isn't told in a straight chronological order.
What can you tell us about the structure?
So it's a nonlinear plot.
Okay.
And a really key part of that is the framing device.
Okay.
So they use an elderly Frank Costello, again, played by De Niro,
Right.
giving this kind of documentary-style interview
Okay. Interesting.
as a voiceover. And that guides us through all the different time periods in the film.
So we're seeing it all through his lens.
Exactly.
And to reinforce that the film also uses archival footage and photographs and some recreated ones.
Yes, to give it that feeling of authenticity.
Right, to kind of support Costello's version of the story.
Exactly, like we're seeing it through his memories.
Now, the review did say that all of this, the timelines, the documentary feel, the dual De Niros, it could be a bit much.
Yeah, I can see that there's so much going on.
Yeah, do you think that's a fair criticism?
I think it's a valid point.
Right.
I think there's a risk that you get pulled out of the story.
Right.
Because there's so much going on visually.
Yeah.
But the review also said that when the film focuses on those key dramatic scenes, it really sucks you back in.
Okay, so let's talk about the plot. What are some of the big moments?
Well, the main thing is the relationship between Costello and Genovese.
Right.
And the central event is Genovese's failed attempt to kill Costello
Okay.
in 1957.
So a big betrayal.
A huge betrayal. Yeah, and that really casts a shadow over the rest of the film.
And it seems like the film doesn't really spend too much time on their early years.
No, it doesn't really.
It's more about this later period.
Yeah, a lot of their backstory is just covered in montage.
Okay.
It's more interested in the key moments of their relationship and what comes out of that.
Now, the review mentioned a couple of scenes that were really interesting.
Yes.
Can you talk about those?
So one is when Costello testifies before the Senate at a hearing on organized crime.
Okay.
and he refuses to plead the fifth.
Wow.
Which is really interesting because that's like breaking the code of silence.
Yeah, huge.
And then the other scene is the big meeting of all the bosses upstate New York.
Okay.
And Costello actually arranges to be late.
Oh, wow.
Because he knows that the police are going to raid the meeting.
What?
Because he tipped them off.
He set them up.
He set them up. It's brilliant.
That's amazing.
It shows how cunning he is.
Wow. So it sounds like when the film is focused on action and those big moments, it's really good.
Yeah, it really shines.
What about all the talking, the scenes where they're discussing mob business?
Those are less interesting.
Okay.
A lot of it's about, betrayal and plotting.
Right.
Which is fine, but it doesn't have the same energy as those other scenes.
So how should we understand this film in terms of the gangster genre?
Well, I think it's trying to be more than just another gangster film.
Okay.
It's almost like a commentary on the genre itself.
Interesting.
Like The Irishman was.
Right.
And you have Levinson and Pileggi who made these classic mob films.
Right.
And then De Niro, who's been in so many of them.
Yeah.
It's like they're looking back at the genre and thinking about its legacy.
And it's interesting that the reviewer said that the film is even more interesting if you think about it in terms of De Niro's career.
Yes, definitely.
But it's just another chapter in his relationship with this kind of character.
Exactly.
And there are other familiar faces in the film too, right?
They got a whole bunch of great character actors who you've probably seen in other gangster films.
Right.
And one of the standouts is Cosmo Jarvis, who was in Shogun.
Oh, yeah.
But apparently he's almost unrecognizable in this.
Wow, so a real transformation.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up, what are the big takeaways here for the listener?
Well, one of the main things is that it has a similar tone to The Irishman.
Okay.
It's looking back on a life of violence and the consequences of that.
And it also seems to be dealing with that classic gangster theme of the American dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
The idea that for some immigrants in the 20th century, the mob was a way to achieve the American dream.
Yeah, a twisted version of it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a recurring theme in these films.
Now, the review did say that the film could have explored the meaning of being a gangster a bit more deeply.
Right.
But it still sounds like the core themes are there.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
I think the themes of ambition and betrayal and, that pursuit of success, even if it's a flawed kind of success, are all there.
So for our listener, The Alto Nights is a film that's really driven by De Niro's performance in these two roles.
Yeah.
It's engaging with the history of the genre. It's a little bit reflective, and it still has some of those classic mob movie moments.
Exactly.
Even if the storytelling is a little bit complex.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's a fan of the genre or of De Niro is really going to enjoy it.
And especially those scenes like Costello's testimony and the meeting upstate.
Yes, those are the highlights.
So to leave you with something to think about, De Niro is such a huge figure in gangster films.
Right.
Do you think playing these two roles is like his final word on the genre? Or is it the start of a new chapter?
That's a good question.
And what does it say about our continuing fascination with these stories of power and violence?
Yeah, why are we still drawn to them?
Exactly. So check out The Alto Nights and let us know what you think. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.